Hey, board gamers, BJ from Board Game Gumbo here, back with another episode of Gumbo Live. It's episode number 134. Gumbo Live, the #1 Facebook Live talk show dedicated to board gaming. Our special guest tonight, it's Dennis K. Chan, the designer of Beyond the Sun from Rio Grande Games. You've heard us in the Gumbo talking about it. It's our #1 game from last year, so I am super pumped to visit with them. Board Game Gumbo, a proud member of Punchboard Media. Hey, check out some of our other fine members like Open Seat Gaming. Marty, Scott, and Sarah have got a great blog that focuses on ensuring that everyone that wants to join the board gaming hobby, no matter their background, has a seat at the table. And Steve, you know why I'm pumping up someone that says Open Seat Gaming on tonight's show, because I think it's an important topic for us to cover. Punchboard Media, where we all bring something to the table. Hey, shout out to fellow Punchboard Media member Carla Kopp from PBM and Galactic Raptor Games. She's publishing a game with Dan from Ian Zhang, who's been on the show before. It's Kingdoms of the Deep. It's on Kickstarter right now. We did a preview. We've got a crowd surfing Lanyap video coming out on the Dice Tower tomorrow if you want to check that out. But we love showcasing Carla's her games. So check that out. Give her a little bit of love tonight. That'd be great. Hit us up on social media tonight, on Twitter or on Facebook or on YouTube at Board Game Gumbo, and we'll be looking for your questions in the chat crew. But enough blather. Let's get right to our guest, Dennis K. Chan, the designer of Beyond the Sun. Hey, welcome to the show, man.
Hi. Thank you.
Dennis, it is fantastic to have you here. I've got Steve also checking in. It's the Name Father. Welcome aboard, man.
Hey, BJ. Hey, Dennis. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Verla is away on assignment. She's out on location for us tonight. So we'll hopefully be seeing her. You never know. She might be in the chat crew, but I think she's traveling tonight. So Steve and I are going to be handling the show, Dennis, and we are super excited to have you on here. Hey, not everybody has played Beyond the Sun yet, but I am curious if you know what an elevator pitch, because you had to do that with Ken Hill before. Give us the elevator pitch. Who is Dennis Chan?
Well, my name is Dennis Chan. I'm living in Boston. I'm a game designer, also a board game player. I have been designing games since 2012 or so, although it's just as a hobby. For my real job, I'm a software developer. I also play the pipe organ.
I actually heard about that. Steve and I are both musicians, and we are, Steve, you know I'm fascinated when we get another musician on the show here. I think, in fact, you had a question that followed up with that. Isn't that right, Steve?
Yeah, well, a couple of questions. When it comes to organ music, do you have a particular favorite composer or favorite piece?
Well, you found a picture.
I do my homework, Dennis. Look at that beautiful organ, Steve.
Mm-hmm.
That's actually a theater organ in Western Mass, Groton.
Okay.
It's really awesome. It's connected to pianos and a percussion orchestra. But your question was, what's my favorite piece?
Favorite composer or favorite piece?
My favorite composer is a French romantic composer called Maurice Dubuffet.
Mm-hmm.
It's just really good. I like French romantic music.
Mm-hmm.
I was expecting you to say either Jeff Downes or Rami Jaffe, but I'm okay with the choice that you've made, because
you didn't guess Bach.
That's it. Yeah.
I feel like everyone says Bach.
I said I was going to go against type, and I wasn't going to say Bach. I was going to go maybe a little bit earlier in Baroque with Buxtehude.
Okay. I like the more modern stuff.
More modern. Okay.
Yeah. So
Jordan,
French romantic is the right period for me.
Jordan, I'm tapping out. When we get beyond Asia or we get beyond the Wallflowers, organ players, that's about as deep as I'm going to go. I joke around. I actually studied organ a long time ago, back when I was about 10 to age 13. But I liked the piano just so much better. I never could get all three to play nicely with each other. My feet, my two hands, they just never played nicely with each other.
You know, it's just like playing a Euro game. You have or a Stefan-Feld game. You have to do this, you have to do that, you have to just do. It's like a music salad.
Right.
Have you seen me
Manual
play
salad.
Trajan?
You're playing lots of different manuals, but it's manual salad.
Yeah,
That's why
exactly.
I'm so bad at Trajan, because I see
I
shiny
love
baubles
that
over
game.
here. I see shiny baubles over here, and I don't focus on what I'm doing. Look, that happened to me when we played a game last week. I kept it was Lost Ruins of Arnak. I just
Okay.
kept getting distracted. I'm looking over here. I'm like, oh, I want to do a little bit of this. I want to do a little bit of that. So
Yeah.
my organ teacher said, you know what we ought to do with your skills at organ? We should really stick at the piano. We really should stick to the piano. So, and that was fine. I played piano for a long time, but I don't know what it is, Steve. That's the question I would have for Dennis. So many people that we've had on the show, designers, content creators, game players, are also musicians.
Mhm.
Do you think there's a connection between game playing, game design, and music?
I think at a higher level that they're both art. You're trying to create. Well, there's the notes, which is the kind of the mechanics in if you want to compare games to music, and then there's the overarching theme, which is really hard to get right. And so it's like composing music. You have the little notes. Every turn, every piece you move are the little notes, and then you have the whole piece of music, which is the whole theme, how things work together, how the movements interlock. I think they're very similar. And they're both kind of logical because you have to read music, you have to play it right, and you have to do a lot of focusing when you practice.
Well, Dennis, tonight is a live show, and we've got a couple of people already checking in. We've got Jordan from the No Cube Zone. Hey, Jordan's going to be on the show next week, so I can't wait to talk to him about that. Our old buddy Nick Elkins is checking in. He says, Beyond the Sun looks great. It's sold out at his FLGS. I got lucky. Well, not me, but Bradley got lucky to get a copy from Rio Grande Games, because I'll tell you, Dennis, we can't find it anywhere. I mean, it's sold out so quickly. That must have just been exciting for you.
It's really exceeded my expectations, because this is my first game, and I'm like, okay, maybe you'll do well. We'll see what happens. We'll see what people say, and it's sold out. So
right,
yes, very unexpected.
You're hoping at least your family buys a copy, right? I mean, at least that happens. So Jordan says, I wonder, do they stimulate similar parts of the brain, board games and music? Anybody know?
I know that there's also a lot of mathematicians that play the pipe organ. If you ever read Cryptonomicon, that the main guy is a mathematician, but he also is obsessed with the pipe organ. So I know at least that instrument is linked to mathematics, and mathematics is definitely linked to board games.
I have heard that before. I've heard guitarists talk about math and chord progression and different things like that. Jesse Sagely is he hasn't checked in on the chat crew, but I know he's watching from iHeart Board Games. Fantastic musician, plays like 72 different instruments. And I bet if I would ask him, he also loves the mathy part of it. Fiona says she loves space games. Hey, Fiona, stick around. We're going to be talking about a really good one tonight. It's called Beyond the Sun, and Dennis Chan is going to tell us all about it in a little while. But all the way from across the world, Thinker Themer's checking in. Hey, what's up? Who are you guessing it is tonight?
Oh, it's Amy.
It's Amy again?
It's gotta be Amy.
Well, hey, Amy, some great videos, by the way. They posted a really good one. I'm because it's a live show, I'm obviously not going to remember what video I watched with her, but whatever that last one was, I really enjoyed it, Amy. It was a really good job. So yeah, Dennis, that's one of the curious things. We've seen a lot of musicians that are all playing, but we also know that musicians have favorite styles of music or favorite types of music. Do you have a favorite type of board game? Do you have a favorite, genre?
Well, I have to say Euro, but that's what I made, and that's kind of.
I wore this for you, Dennis.
Nice. Yeah, that's awesome.
Thematic
but
Euros.
in the subset, I do. Well, I can just name designers. That's easier. I like Stefan Feld. I like the Salady games. But they have to stick to one theme. Like, I can't be just shiny things everywhere. So I like thematic, very tightly integrated salad games.
We've been debating about a couple of games. I'm not sure if you played some new Feld games. We haven't got Bonfire to the table yet, but we've been playing Carpe Diem and also Castles of Tuscany. Have you played either one of them?
I have. Well, because of pandemic, I haven't played that many, but I read, I watched all the tutorials. I like the sound of Tuscany, not so much Bonfire. I have to try it. And what the other one? Carpe Diem I actually played. It's a little bit on the lighter side, and it doesn't have that many moving parts.
And
If you agree with me.
No, Dennis, I think that's what I was going to say. So there are people that want the big bonfire Trajan, those Forum Trajanum, all those heavier side of Felds. And then there's people like me who dabble in that with Aquasphere, but the rest of the time I want to play Castle of Burgundy, or I want to play Castle of Tuscany, or I want to play Carpe Diem. I like to dabble on that side. I own a couple of other Felds, but I really do like the lighter Felds. I think they play snappy and quick, and you still get that puzzly element. So
Burgundy is my favorite Feld out
Steve?
of all his games. So
Steve loves Burgundy.
So it has that whole like shiny things everywhere, but they're all integrated, and that's what I really like.
Yeah.
Hey, Nick's got a question for you. What kind of work do you do as a software engineer, and does it influence your board game designs?
So I actually work for a public education consulting company. So it's not a software company. They have a bunch of consultants. They go into public schools all over the country, and they try to raise achievements. They try to help some solve budget problems. But there's a little software there they have for elementary school scheduling. So turns out there's currently no software for scheduling elementary schools. People just use Excel. So like way back in the last century. So we're trying to bring schools back into this century and help them with schedules, and just having it online is already amazing to people because they have to share Excel documents and like send it everywhere. And if you make a change, you have to send it again. So this is what I do. I wouldn't say my job influences design directly, but my software skills do. Because
that makes sense.
I actually use, when I prototype a game, I actually write a web page for the game that displays the cards because I can change the card arrangement, the template, like super fast. I don't know Photoshop, I don't know InDesign, so this is actually the way I use it. And then I can like codify all my cards, and if I change it, I can track all the changes because that's what software engineers do. So that helps me with the design process a lot.
Do you think having a website? I saw Ken mention that in the designer diaries or the developer diaries. Having a website was kind of a leg up in rising above the other games that kind of flood the market every year.
I think so. I think it helped me organize like the pitch and like what is important, and just kind of dress it up. I think first impression is very important when you pitch to publishers. But at that point, I also didn't know where I was going. I was just kind of putting it up. Maybe I'll do Kickstarter. Maybe I will just leave it as a hobby project. So it was kind of like just kind of a pet project thing.
Yeah. Interesting. Steve, we should play Rate the Felds with Dennis Chan tonight. People are throwing out their favorite Felds. This one, I think, Steve, is going to be a little bit of maybe a bone with you. Which one is this one?
Oracle of Delphi. This was played online the first time, so it's very different, I'm sure, than being on the table. But on the screen, I was lost, just randomly moving things and having zero fun.
It's not very intuitive on the computer. I will totally agree with you. Unlike you, I've played it with you online, but I've also played the physical copy with Bradley, and it's a different experience. What about you, Dennis? Have you played Bradley's favorite game, Oracle at Delphi?
I have. I actually didn't know it's a Feld game, so it is very correct that it is a non-Feld. I didn't read the box, so I was like, okay. It's a game.
Bradley, he agrees with you. He didn't even realize it was a Feld. It's definitely a not. It doesn't feel like a Feld because of that race element, I think, and because of all the special powers that you develop. We don't normally see that. We see that with the tiles in Castles of Burgundy, right? You're getting these one-off special powers, or the yellow tiles. I always forget what they're called, but the yellow tiles give you special bonuses.
Technologies is that what
it is?
Are they the technologies? I think.
And the same thing with Carpe Diem. You have these little tiny engines that you run. They're very, very tiny. But for me, Dennis, I love satisfying little tiny spin-off engines. I like games that do that. So the ones that you run the entire engine, sort of like Beyond the Sun, I'm not so good at, unfortunately.
This would kind of come back to almost to music for me there too. And I know you said more romantic, but I'm thinking back in Baroque, you're talking about voices. You're talking about different lines.
Yeah.
And with a good Feld game, you've got voices that are moving in different directions at different times. but they become
That's a great analogy.
And I never felt that way with Oracle of Delphi. There were a lot of different dissonant lines, and you were trying to do a race, but I never felt that way, that there was disharmony with Burgundy.
You know what?
It all comes back together as a whole.
I know what you would say if Feld were on the show. You'd say, Feld, you've got this long history of making great games. If it's not Baroque, don't fix it. Don't fix it.
BJ, going for Baroque with that one.
Sorry about that one. All right. So we've got our guest here, Dennis K. Chan, the designer of Beyond the Sun. Super excited to have him on. But he's played a couple of spicy hot games. And one of those games that I'd like to talk about is a game I haven't played. I've played the newest version of it, but you got to play the classic Dune set in the universe of Dune. I think you played the newest version, the Gale Force 9 version. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
You mean the one that you're showing?
Yeah. You played this one.
I own the old one, but remember pandemic, so the old one doesn't get played.
So you've played. You haven't played Dune Imperium yet. You've played the classic Dune.
I learned it online, but I haven't played it.
Okay. Yeah. So I actually haven't played the classic Dune. I think Bradley has. So we'll have to find out if anybody in the chat crew has played the classic Dune, not Dune Imperium. Tell us about Dune and how it plays and how close it hews to the actual storyline by Frank Herbert.
It's just a really well, like, this is one of the examples where the game really fits the book, because the special powers, they just follow the game, the novel, and they fit the mechanic. It's not just forced it into the game, and it's very exciting. It's just like you have these big swings in armies, and like you can lose everything in one turn because someone is your traitor, or if you lose a battle, you basically lose everything except your leader. And if your leader is a traitor, you lose everything. So it's just these big swings and epic stories. So I know I didn't mention that I also like story, like telling games, and that's not my main genre, but I like Euro games that will become a story when you play it. And I'm very happy that Beyond the Sun kind of did that, because like we would sometimes after a good game will be like, oh, you storm the whole galaxy and then you decimate it because you just settle down, and then other people pick off. So kind of doing this the same, we just made it into a story. Okay, you rose in power and then you kind of left, and then other people took it, and then so it's fun both in mechanically, and also it fits the theme, and also it creates great stories afterwards.
How does it play exactly? What kind of mechanics does it use? Is it your typical conflict where there's area control or area majority, or how does that work?
It's not necessarily control. Well, to win, you do have to control 3 of 5 cities if you're not in alliance, and 4 of 5 cities if you are in an alliance. But you don't count points. There's no points. You either win or not. And the battle is there's no dice. I just want to say I don't like dice games. Well,
and yet you invented the dice game.
No, dice placement is fine, but it's rolling dice is not fine.
We're going to talk about this later, but there is one element, Steve, where you actually roll a dice just once during the game. There was a card I played, and it let me roll a dice. I was so happy. But no, I'm like you. I love dice placement games, but Dune doesn't have dice. That it's deterministic combat.
It's almost like bidding. It's a bidding for combat. So you have the army, and you have, like, let's say 5 versus 8, and whatever you bid is lost. So do you really want to bid all of yours and just to outbid the other one, but then you weaken yourself? The person with 8, if you bid 5, I'm just simplifying it. If you bid 5, you'll win, but then you lose 5. You only have 3 left, and next round you're going to be in a weak position. And then there's an additional element, which is you can add a tile to your bid, which is your leader, which also has a number on it, but you don't know which one you're adding, so you have to guess. And on top of that, you can play cards to kill the other person's leader. So now it's back down to the base number. So it's like, it's bidding, but it's like mathy, and you have to guess. It's a little bit of bluffing too. So it's the battle is so simple. It's just math, but then there's multiple levels of bluffing in it.
Now, Steve, you've played Dune, right?
I have, yes.
How was your experience?
My individual experience with it was probably for the first hour and a half or hour and 45 minutes or so, not so great until somebody betrayed somebody else and needed a new alliance, and I was there. But for the most part, it was a 5-player game we were playing. Dennis is absolutely right. It really does capture the nature of the game. When you're out of an alliance, you're kind of sitting alongside Dune. You're off planet. You're waiting for somebody to turn on somebody else. So that as the 5th player, and you can only have one alliance with one other player, there's somebody left out. That was me, the Emperor.
Yeah.
Waiting for the end, and the Emperor got back in and had an alliance, and then shared the victory at the end.
But
So
you have an easier
it was thematic, right on top of that thematic.
without an alliance. You actually have an easier path to victory, though, with less planets.
Yes,
cities.
to an extent, but there's also they are so much stronger in alliance because the shared information that they can pass back and forth. Being left out of an alliance leaves you weaker. Yeah, you have to do less to get the victory, but it's going to be harder to do that less.
Yeah. And this is one of the flaws of this game, which is you have to play with 6 people. And it usually ends up with 2-2-2 as the alliance because you cannot have 3-player alliances. But given this game was made so long ago, it's so well done. Like, games have progressed a lot, and this is what from the 80s. So like it was so well done then, and we have gained so much knowledge since, and it's still persistent. There are some rough edges, like the alliances. It's a little rigid, but otherwise it's still fun.
Negotiation is in there too, because you have to make the alliance. But fortunately, even by being that 5th wheel, like you were saying, Dennis, the Emperor's power, if I remember correctly, was being able to conjure money to provide resources in that sense. We got to the end where one team needed resources and was happy to betray somebody else to take my money and share the victory. So I did not have the greatest game for most of the game, but managed to sneak in and ride in on Kevin's coattails at the end.
Yeah, Bradley talks about following up what you said about the different factions. He says the asymmetry of the factions is where Dune, the original we're talking about, shines, and that's almost completely from the actual story of the novels.
Yes,
it gives a great link between the game and the books, and that's what I want out of a game that's going to be based on an IP. I don't want it to just be a Monopoly slapped with Halo on it. I want it to actually remind me of the books.
So here's a question back to you. What do you think of Dune Imperium? Even though I haven't played, is it just a slap on, or is it?
Well, so Amy said the bidding combat sounds similar to Dune Imperium, and it really is from that aspect. It's not dice rolling. It's bidding more in the way of, as Alex said on the Dukes of Dice podcast, bidding more in the way of like Scythe, where you just you don't know how much to commit because it's perfect information as to what is inside. I don't remember the name of the little desert area where you do the conflict, but there are cards and powers you can play, and people can overcommit at that point. It also has the Everdell mechanic where you play and play and play until you pass. Well, then as soon as someone sees you pass, they know exactly how much they need to put in power in the conflict, and they can go up against you. So, how much do you put in to bluff with them, not knowing that you have some intrigue card that can really win the battle? So that thematically reminds me, I haven't read the book in many, many years, but that reminded me of that interplay between the houses and the scheming and the alliances and the backstabbing and all that. I need more plays in it to get to figure out whether the card play at the top, the market that you're buying for, and the different things, whether that is really thematically like the game. Of course, influencing all the different factions, which is a major part of the game. You could skip. I didn't do any conflict at all. I mean, I maybe won one conflict. I was focusing more on influence, and to me, that feels thematic to the books. The Spice Must Flow card is just a way to just plop down some whatever the resources are and get points. So that's kind of like the book also. I mean, whoever controls the spice is going to control the planet. At least in the first book. I never got past the first book. So I'm not sure, but I think Dune Imperium does not feel like just here's the board game with a Dune picture of it. It feels like thematically tied back to the game. So One of these days, I'd like to play Dune. Lots of people have played the Rex, which is the Fantasy Flight version of it, when they kind of steered it toward Twilight Imperium. I don't know if any of you play Rex.
No.
I've heard of it, but
yeah,
I
have not played that yet. Dean says he's been listening to the books to prep for Dune Imperium. Yep, that's not bad. Wow.
The audiobook for the original Dune is good. It's a good performance too.
Yeah, and Bradley says 1979. The original Dune game came out in 1979. And with 6 players, it sounds like it actually still holds up, Dennis.
Yeah,
right?
It does. Yeah. People still play it. So.
Well, Nick says he's played Dune Imperium a bunch, and the worker placement spots is very thematic, true to to the different factions and the characters from the book. And of course, they also use artwork. Instead of being stills from the movie, they use artwork that gives you the flavor of the characters from the movie. So that's kind of cool. I think for some reason, Steve, when you see actual pictures from a movie or stills, it almost takes you out of the game.
It does.
Right? I don't know why that is, Dennis. Why is it if I see the actual still shots, it takes me out?
I don't know. Like the Battlestar Galactica game, I would rather not see the. It just, I don't know. It makes it look cheap. I don't know why. Like it's just how I feel.
It doesn't translate to cardboard, I don't think, right?
Yeah.
Well, this is not the way in Dune Imperium. The actual artwork resembles the actors, so you're going to recognize them. And that's the original Dune with a little mixture of talking about Dune Imperium coming out. BJ from Game Gumbo, I've got my guest here, Dennis Chan, designer of Beyond the Sun, and we're talking some spicy hot games. And I've got a game that I played this week. I just got it in. I don't think you've played it yet, Dennis, but are you a Roll and Write fan?
Barely played any.
Okay.
I played Welcome to, and I think that might be it. Oh, and Railroad Inc.
Two good ones.
Yeah.
2 good rando writers. This one is Three Sisters. It's from Motor City Gameworks. If you've never heard of that publishing company, it's really, Matt Riddle and Ben Pitchback, designers of tons of games like Fleet and a million of them. And they designed a game called Fleet the Dice Game a year or so ago. It was kind of a roll and write version of their Fleet game. But what they set out to do, Dennis, is make a board game that's a roll and write, rather than a roll and write game. Does that make sense?
Can you elaborate?
They're going to give you the flavor of you playing a full-scale board game in a roll and write version. Whereas Welcome to, great game.
Yeah.
Railroad Inc., great game. They feel like roll and writes. You're doing stuff to mark on paper.
Yeah.
This feels like all the interplay and actions of a what does Matt always say, of a disappointingly mathy Euro game. It's got all that interaction of this big giant game just into 2 little sheets. Now, when I say sheets, I mean they're full to the top. There's not an inch, there's not a centimeter on the sheets that is not covered with some kind of symbol or circle that you have to dot in. And what I like about Three Sisters, I liked Fleet the Dice game a lot, but I wasn't familiar with Fleet. I've never actually played Fleet until this year. I hadn't played it back then. So Three Sisters is the spiritual successor. It takes its genesis as something that happened in Ben's backyard. Ben learned that you could plant the 3 sisters and that squash, corn, and beans together, because the original inhabitants of North America learned that if you plant them symbiotically, they each grow better. The squash gets rid of the weeds, the corn protects from something, and I forgot what the 3. Steve, do you know? Can you help me out? Because I'm floundering. I don't know why, but they do well as symbiotically.
Yeah.
So Matt says, well, that's a board game, but let's try it as a roll and write instead. The players roll dice. It's a rondel instead of a Fleet the Dice game. The actions that you select come from a rondel of 6 or 7 or 8 actions. But what's always interesting is that whatever dice is not chosen, once everybody's taken their choice. So Dennis takes a 6, and that means he plants beans, and that means he also does the 6 action over here on this board. And then I take the 4, and I go into my garden in the 4 spot, and I plant some corn, or maybe I water my corn, and then I do the action on the 4 spot. And everybody does that, right? Whatever dice is left over, everyone does. So you want to take the die you really need, but at the same time, you're hoping Steve doesn't take that second die you really want. So you're actually leaving places on your board, hoping that no one else takes that die, because I really want the 4, but I also need the 2. So that kind of juicy, delicious decision of leaving out the die, whereas a lot of other games, the last die is shelved. Nobody uses it. That's not as satisfying. That's not as satisfying, Dennis. I want to be able to use that extra little action. It kind of reminds me from that standpoint of any game like a Scythe, where when other people do stuff and you get a benefit, you know what I'm talking about?
I really like the mechanic. Anytime someone else does things, I do it too. Like it just makes the turn like
Space Base. Space Base did it perfect. I mean, you develop your board so that whatever Dennis and Steve do, I'm going to get benefits. That is just, that's just so satisfying. I don't know what it is. It hits certain markers in your brain that just kind of triggers the dopamine response.
There's also Puerto Rico, which is a classic example.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Sure. The objective in Puerto Rico is really not to pick the spot you want, to make other people pick the spot you really need.
Yeah.
Right after you did the action, that's going to make that action even better. That's how to win at Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
If not, you're always a step behind. Three Sisters doesn't go that far, but what it does is it I've been joking with Matt and Ben that it reminds me of a kid that just opened up a big box and has bubble wrap in it, and he wraps himself in bubble wrap, because by the back half of the game, you have so many little synergies and combos. All you're doing is pop, 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 pop in bubble wrap. And it's just really exciting in the back half of the game to see all those combos really play. It's coming out on Kickstarter. I don't have a preview up yet. I want a couple more plays, because I've just been playing it solo, and I'm trying to get a couple more plays in it with multiplayers. It's got a great solo mechanic, by the way. You're competing against this farmer who keeps taking the best spots. And the other thing about it is it allows you to upgrade your actions. And most of these games like Gone Shun Clever or Welcome to, they might help you get more points, but they don't upgrade your actions. In Three Sisters, you can grab a rake or a hoe or a water barrel or an apple pie holder, and all of that stuff gives you more benefits. And also, who hates when the dice hate you, right? You're rolling dice and they just don't behave, right? In Three Sisters, you've got the compost pile, and you can burn that compost to mitigate your dice rolls, like you do in Castle of Burgundy with the.
I like that.
The workers.
Yes.
The workers. So you can do that in Three Sisters. So that's Three Sisters. It's coming out from Motor City Gameworks. It's going to be relatively inexpensive. This is them self-publishing, not a big deal. It's just a game that they want to see come out. It'll be coming out in Kickstarter sometime in March. Check that out. Yeah. I do get excited about games. As I tell Alex and Steve all the time, do I want to work or do I want to talk about games on a Tuesday night? As you can see, I like talking about games on Tuesday night. But this is what I really do. I think, oh yeah, that's right, Evan. I totally forgot about that. That is Beth Sobel, our favorite artist, out there doing the cover for Three Sisters. So it's beautiful.
For this is a roll and write, BJ. It sounds like rather than it being purely solitaire, you do have to pay attention to what other people are collecting. You can't just play this as, here's my board, I'm going to try to beat somebody else's score. You have to be, playing their boards too with the dice that you're choosing.
You absolutely do, because in that rondel, look, the dice are sometimes going to hose you, right? You're going to roll the dice, and the dice you that you really need doesn't come out. That's where you have to mitigate it. But the winning strategy, once you know the game, is to watch Steve and Dennis and how they're developing their garden, because I need to zig while you guys are zagging. Otherwise, you're going to always take the actions I want, and then I can never get them. Those numbers correspond not only to the sections in your garden that you're going to upgrade, but it also corresponds to the rondel actions. So I got to make sure I'm doing that. So, yeah. Joel Lewis.
We're very popular down under tonight.
He wants to know about your shirt. Let's see if I can solo.
I actually belong to a game design group in Boston called Game Makers Guild, and this is their shirt.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, exclusive.
That reminds me that Bradley had wanted to know if, well, you know what? We're going to talk about that in a little while. We'll talk about the Boston Fig. Bradley's participated in Boston Fig a couple of times. So you guys, he may have actually seen some of your participation there. So
I'll bring that up too, because that's how I got my game running.
Yeah. So we are definitely going to talk about it. So that is Three Sisters coming out in March. Check that out. Let me see what I got next for you. BJ from More Game Gumbo. I've got my guest here, Dennis Chan. We got one more game to talk about before we move on to the big game of the night. And that's a game I got to play. Steve, I don't think you've gotten to play this one. Dennis, you've played Alma Mater from Eggertsfield Games, one of my favorite publishers. Tell me about. I'm curious. I've only got one play in it. I'm not ready to review it yet, but I want to hear what you say about Alma Mater.
I played twice. It's definitely a brain burner.
Yes.
It is a chain reaction. I would just say it's It seems simple, but there's like just so many steps you have to plan ahead because the money is really tight. And there's the secondary resources, which is books, and those are really tight. And there's a little market in there that you have to get to before other people get there. Otherwise, it will be too expensive for you. And then there's a little bit of the play until you run out of actions thing, where you have workers, but you can also tap the cards. And if you do that, then you actually save a turn, and then you can keep going after everyone is done. And there's a point salary thing, which is you get, like, if you look at the lower part of that board, it's like a whole thing of points that you can get. There's just a lot going on, and I wouldn't play that every day because it hurts. But if you want a real brain burner, it's good.
All right, so Alma Mater. Steve, it's from a design crew that I love and has some of our favorite games. We're talking.
You really loved Coimbra.
Oh yeah, we're talking Lorenzo. We're talking Coimbra. We're talking Grand Austria Hotel. We're talking all the games that just tickle the ivories in my brain. Right? I love these games. I'm not necessarily good at them, although I've won Lorenzo a couple times. So I was super excited. And here's the other thing, Dennis. I love art. So art in the game will make me stand up and take notice. The cover of Beyond the Sun, I'm going to tell you that's one of the things that attracted us before we even knew anything about it. Absolutely loved that cover. The artist in this game is Chris Williams. He's an artist from Quebec, and I don't know what it is. Some people just connect with certain artists. Like we love Beth Sobel, right? I have that same thing with Chris Williams. I just love the way he does people. I love the way he does colors. It kind of reminds me a little bit of a Mary Blairish. I always want to ask Chris if he's influenced by Mary Blair at all, because that's kind of what I see with these colors and the way that the characters are built out. But this was not Coimbra to me, and I can't explain why. At least on the first play, I had a lot of trouble grokking where the points were coming from. Whereas in Coimbra where the points are coming from. They're coming from the traveling side of the board. They're coming from all the cards you're going to play, and you know that you have to manage your economy, either gold or the swords, I forget what that resource was, or both, to be able to make sure that you're always getting those actions that you need every round to be able to move and to be able to buy the cards. And at the same time, overarching, you got the dice. You got to control where the spots are on the dice. Alma Mater, man, this one was a mystery to me, Dennis. Bradley kicked our butts, which is not a surprise because he does really well in these type of games. But the three other players, I think one of them did pretty. I think the lady did pretty well. I can't remember her name. We had a guest there at the game store, but the rest of us were really struggling with this. It took until the last third of the game for me to kind of figure out some of the strategy I wanted to play. I don't know if I liked the economic system of the books themselves.
Okay.
In my opinion, they replaced the dice mechanic of choosing dice for the strength of the dice as to how it's going to be in one of your actions, but also for the cost. So you can get that 6, but it's going to cost you a lot of gold, but you're going to jump ahead of everybody. So you gotta decide, do I want to burn all my gold in order to jump ahead of Steve so I can take that card? Well, maybe Steve doesn't really need that card, so maybe I could play a 3 instead. Save some. Oh no, Steve just took the card. Man, I should have played the 6. That is such a juicy mechanic. This one is more about books, setting the value of the books, right, Dennis? Remember that?
Yeah.
You have to set the value of the books. You want to be ahead in the books. You want to stay ahead so people want to buy your books so you can get, money from that and maybe points back. I found it a little bit too far removed.
Well, I do have to admit, I actually haven't tried Coimbra, but I have been wanting to forever. So I can't compare, but the books, it's also, it is a little bit of a mystery. I only played twice. the price is actually just a straight going down for 432, unless you have one of the powers where you can switch around. But I think that's 4D chess for me still. But most of the time, it's just if people restock, then you get to get it for cheap. If they don't, you may not even be able to get it at all. And the last game, someone tried to not restock it all and caused a shortage in books. And I don't know if it's a good idea, but so there's a lot of dimensions I still haven't tried.
One thing I did note in watching Bradley play, because Bradley, I do actually try to watch what you're doing so that I can learn for the next time. And yes, Dean, I think that unlike Coimbra, which I instantly liked, and just liked even more after every play, I think maybe Alma Mater is going to take a couple of times for me to dig into it and figure it out. You're probably right there. But Bradley says, I love that book auction mechanic because it doesn't look really important at first, but it's actually the key element of the game. And that's why I was stressing it, Bradley. I think it is. I think the other key element of the game is the track on the, let's see, where is it on this? Does it show it on the board?
The A, B, C, D, E, probably, the e-research track. It's not filled out in the picture.
Okay, so it's not filled out the track. That's the cards on the left side. They fill out this track. And I watched, that seems to be one of the key elements where you just cannot ignore that track as it's going up. And I think if I do a better job, that's what I'm gonna have to do. I'm gonna have to learn that track. Whereas the in Coimbra, that track that you use looking at the monasteries, it can either be the strategy you want to go for or a supplemental strategy to what you're doing. But it's not necessary that you actually maximize all of your actions in there. It's a way to provide players with a different way to win. And I like that. I like when games have multiple paths to win. We're going to talk about that with your game, that it doesn't have one path to win. I love that part. In fact, but we'll talk about it when we get to it. But in this case,
sounds like that answers Amy's question from earlier. But do you like Coimbra more or less than this one? And it sounds like, at least for now, you're thinking this is not Coimbra.
If I were recommending a game, it'd be Coimbra over Alma Mater any time. And now after really playing a lot of Lorenzo lately, man, Lorenzo is getting back up there above Coimbra when it was below Coimbra. Now I might recommend Lorenzo first. I'd still say Lorenzo, Coimbra up there, then coming down to Grand Austria Hotel or Alma Mater. I think I like the other two better.
Is there room in this one, do you think, for it to rise in your estimation? Because I think, and not to oversimplify the world, but I think, like with games and people, there are some that you like more as you get to know them, and there are some that you like less as you get to know them. Which way do you think this one's trending?
Dennis, I bet you're going to be like me. If I don't really grok all the elements of a game, I can't say I enjoy it as much as a game where it flows. Carpe Diem was like that. The first couple of times I played at Carpe Diem, I didn't quite understand how things were an interplay. Same thing with Trajan. I had no idea what was going on in Trajan. Now that I do, I enjoy both of those games much more. I'll be honest, I hated Trajan. When I first played it 10 years ago, whatever it was, I did not like it at all.
It just clicked with me somehow, that game. So it does matter a lot if it clicks with you.
Yeah, it was probably the first heavy-ish game I ever played, and I was not ready for it. From a life of Cosmic Encounter and Ticket to Ride, and then jump into Trajan, and having never played a Feld before, that was a bumpy ride. So yeah, Steve, I'm gonna give room to Alma Mater, but you know what? Sometimes, look, I'm gonna say, as much as I like Grand Austria Hotel, I think Lorenzo and Coimbra are better games. So Alma Mater may be just like that. It may be just one of those games, like we were talking about Feld games, that just don't hit. But after one play, I'm not ready yet. Bradley says, I still... Wait, go ahead. What you gonna say?
I think there's a Goldilocks zone where if the game is too over your head, then you won't like it. If it's if you already figured it out, you won't like it. It has to leave something to be desired. Then you will keep on to play again.
The old Goldilocks planet zone. I like that. And we're applying that to board games. All right. So that is Alma Mater. I'm going to do this for now. I'm not willing to shut it out because one play is, let's face it, for a game like this, one play is not enough. You got to play it again. So I'm going to play it a couple more times and see what I like it. A couple of people are checking in. Dean says, Grand Austria Hotel, Alma Mater, Coimbra, and Lorenzo for me. Oh,
interesting. That's his
Grand
order.
Austria Hotel first?
Yes, he does.
Bradley says, got to play with the house abilities with the expansion. It makes the game 100% better. Bradley, you're the only person I know that's played with the expansion. I don't know anything about the Lorenzo expansion. I really don't. I love that game, by the way.
Putting Grand Austria Hotel lower on your list, you're only feeling comfortable doing this because Verla's not here. You know that
is exactly right.
That is a top game of hers.
But I've played Grand Austria Hotel 2 or 3 times. And wait, I played it 3 or 4 times now. I actually like it. I like it, but not love it.
I also got to say, I'm very jealous of all of you because you get to try all of them. I mean, I have limited time. I only watch like how to play, and I rarely get to play that many games. So
Steve, we should let Dennis in on a secret. What do you think?
Go ahead.
We play these on computer, Dennis.
I know. I play on the computer too. But
okay.
It's the people and time and getting a group together.
You know what? Talk to us after the show. We're gonna make it happen for you.
Async has been our friend for some of that. It's hard for a teach, but once you know the game, if you're willing to let the game go on for a couple of days, it's okay to play as you're able. We do that with Concordia all the time.
Yeah, Concordia, which I normally just can't get together for people at games, but computer has saved us. And look at Amy. There you go, Amy. I'm not dogging on Grand Austria Hotel at all. I really like it, but not as much as those other ones. There is not enough. Wait, what did she say? Not enough stressful pressure. Too much. You gotta meet I forgot what the little requirements are. Oh wow. That's
I did play that one. I think it was stressful.
I find both that and Lorenzo very stressful. Now I don't even.
Amy likes a competitive game.
I don't even
competitive against herself in some ways too.
I've totally figured out. Like in Lorenzo, I'm just totally focused on on 1 leader card and making sure I'm not getting excommunicated. I don't even think about the rest of the game because the rest of it will fall into place. I just don't want to be stressed out. I
think you'll be stressed by Alma Mater to keep track of all the achievements, the 3 busts at the bottom, and the tech tree. Well, tech track. It's not a tree there.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about a tree. BJ from Game Gumbo. I've got my guest here, Dennis Chan, the designer of Beyond the Sun, Bradley and I's favorite game from 2020, published by Rio Grande Games. I don't think Steve's played it yet. No, I've played it a couple of times. Dennis, you've probably played it more than a couple of times. Give us the elevator pitch. What is Beyond the Sun? And you can ignore that terrible score from the LSU Auburn game. It's still sitting up there.
So Beyond the Sun is a space civilization game set in like 200 years from now, where
23rd century.
Yeah, 23rd century, where we just devastated Earth because we are very irresponsible. So to not have the species go extinct, we decided to work together to share our technology, and that's why this is the whole thing about the game, which is a shared technology tree. It is not a co-op game, but all the information is open and all the actions you can see, and everyone can research them. Once you share the technology, bam, we created space travel, and now we can go to any planet. We can go colonize. We can go research ridiculous technologies, and of course, humans start to fight again, and that's the beginning of the game. And in this game, the tech tree is variable. You're building a kind of a shared tableau on the board, and every game is different because these texts are color-coded, and they have different kind of leaning towards what type of game it will become on that day. And every time you play, it's going to be different. And then there's different achievements, which will also drive the game in different ways. And whatever events come up, which is something that happens when you research a technology, also drives the game in different ways.
I read your designer diaries, and you had some interesting inspirations for this game. What was the jump off for Beyond the Sun?
The main inspiration was Civ 5, because I was obsessed with civilization on the computer back when I was just about like a year or 2 in designing games. Nothing really came out yet, no great ideas, but I really liked Civ 5. And then I realized that no board games has a real tech tree. Okay, you have Eclipse has that little tech market, so it's a market. You have a game called Progress, which has a tree, but it's not really working that well. You have Innovation, which jumps everywhere. It's not really a tree. And
TI4 or TI3,
TI3 has a tree, but it's like it has too many things going on, and the game
and it takes 8 hours.
It takes 8 hours. I actually have never finished the game.
Okay.
So can I distill that into something that I really want to treat? Basically, that's my I just wanted it, but I don't want it to be so long. So I made a game with ancient civilization first because Civ 5 was ancient civilization, starting from pottery or farming or whatever. It didn't work because of the variable tech tree. How many things can you go from ironworking? It has to make sense. But once I switched to sci-fi, it's just so much easier. Yep.
Yeah, because that entry level is space travel. Once you hit space travel, it opens up everything else, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Because in this game, Steve, at some point, everyone invents what they call FTL, faster than light speed. So all of a sudden, you're beyond the solar system. It's the entire universe is available to you, right, Dennis?
Yep, yep. So that's the basic technology, the level 0. So that's the beginning of the game. And then from there, you branch off into the 4 flavors of level 1 that I talked about: the military, the resource, the science, and the colonization. And then you start branching off, and all you need to research is to have a shared color from something that is the lower of a lower level. And that's why it's variable.
The success of this part of the game, Steve, to me, is the fact that this looks on the table. By the way, that is a 7 or 8 foot conference table at my office. And we needed that space because with COVID, we try to limit the amount of people that are going to play. We only played 2 or 3, as I told you, Dennis. Haven't been able to play 4 yet, unfortunately. Someday we will. But this is a big, giant conference table. And that board takes up almost the entire table, as you could see there. But the beauty of it is the mechanics on this part. I mean, gotta admit it, Steve, it looks a little intimidating, right? It's not at all.
Yes.
It's very intuitive, and the iconography is very clear. How did you guys pull that off, Dennis? Because you take a game that is complex in the way that everything moves and everything comes together, yet all the mechanics are relatively simple and pretty intuitive.
Yeah, so let me bring you to the next inspiration, which is my favorite board game, Agricola.
Okay.
So I'm going to talk about it first before I get back to your question. So I'm sure you played it.
Yes.
You start with basic actions. Take 3 wood, take an occupation, whatever. And then every round you get 1 more, and then everyone can go on it. It's a little more complex. Maybe it doesn't get any more complex, but you get more and more actions. And
it builds the complexity one round at a time.
It introduces you to the simple stuff, and then you get more and more options.
Right.
And that's what connected me to, maybe the tech tree can be actions. Now, back to your question, because those actions are so small, like you do one thing, that's how my design started. Most of the time, it's just like build something or collect something, that for the basic text. And then for the more advanced, you just build a little bigger or do 2 things at the same time. And some technologies, and this did not follow Agricola, has no action on it. You just get something when you research it, and that's it. So it doesn't overwhelm players. If every technology has an action, you end up with, 30 actions to choose from? That's too many.
Right. That's too many.
So a lot of the hidden complexity is just you only do one thing at a time, or when you research something, it does not expand your selection choice space, so to speak, and so it clears your mind. You can plan out a couple of turns ahead without having to think about, oh no, I have to do this, and then I have to remember to do this. I don't like games where like you do one thing and it just like you have to remember to do this, you have to remember to do that. So this is clean. You just do one thing and that's it.
He's right about that. It's doing one thing. So we joke around a lot about Vital Lacerda games on the show. I like Lisboa, and Vinhos was not quite as good. The Vital Lacerda games have the opposite. He claims it's just, you're just playing a card, pick a card, playing a card. But the reality is, you're staring at a board, and the board is basically built out from the very start, all of the complex systems are there. Where do I start? I've got this Rube Goldberg machine, and I don't even know where the start button is, you know? And sometimes I press the button to start the machine, and I don't have enough quarters to finish because I forgot that this is going to trigger that, is going to trigger this, and oh my God, I don't have enough gold. Your game doesn't do that. It introduces the simpler mechanics and just adds on the complexity as players get experience.
Yes.
What I wanted to talk about is the ingenious way that you and I guess Ken kind of helped out here on this, if I understand the developer part, is the player boards and the way they interact with the rest of the game.
Yeah, so this is a almost completely different system that I added on after the tech tree, my desire for tech tree was fulfilled. It's like, okay, so what do I do with the workers? I'm trying to remember when this game was still Ancient Civilization, it was just cubes, and it was just you get these territories like plains, mountain. Remember in Civilization you get hammers, and the cubes are hammers basically. I was like, oh, that's kind of boring. And then I looked at through the ages, and then I looked at the population. I'm like, oh, the first 4 population cost 3 food, the next 4 cost 4 food, 5 food, 6 food. Can I do something here? But through the ages is also really long, so I'm trying to do something that's simpler. So here, all you need to do is you unlock. It's an unlock mechanic. You get the first 4 population from the first row because it's unlocked. There's no disc blocking it, and you have to grow your food before the next 2. So there's no cost. You don't pay 3 food for 1 population because that's a lot of math. You just grab anything that is open, that is not blocked by the food disc. But of course, eventually, because humans get really smart, you can build robots which bypasses the food. So you just take cubes from the leftmost cube you can find, and I've seen players have taken like 3 food from the board and they clear out the whole cube because they just kept building robots that don't require food. So that's one thing that I got from Through the Ages. It just evolved over testing, and it just got to this state, which I'm happy about. Another thing is completely mirrored with the money, the ore side, which is the same. It's a pretty standard track where you unblock, you take out these gears, and you get more money. So I like the duality of it. So I only need to explain one thing. I don't have to explain 2 different systems.
You got all these dice, Steve, and they look like different dice, but they're multi-use dice, basically. You're flipping them between rockets or people or I guess it's ore. Is that what the other?
No. There's 4 rockets, 4 spaceships, 1, 2, 3, 4, and a human, and then a box.
Yeah, that's right.
Which is unborn people.
But instead of having a bunch of different types of resources for this, it's all one die, and the die just flips around. So you pull him off as a person, and he launches into space as a rocket. When he expends, he comes back onto the board as a box. So it's neat the way that these dice can be used in multiple ways as some of the components in the game. I thought that was pretty ingenious, Dennis.
Multi-use cards, I've heard. Multi-use dice is, at least from these faces, for what you're describing, it sounds very new.
Yeah, that's another thing that I stumbled upon. That's like kind of the third breakthrough, which is I used to have, as I said, just cubes. But then I either place on the map, which is you're working on the farm, again, with the Ancient Civilization, or you're doing the technology because you're a scientist, or you're going on space. And I used to have ships. I'm like, why have so many pieces if the ships are, well, it used to have a range of 1 to 10 power. And it turns out if you have, people can just run away if you have too high. So I limited to 4, and then I counted 1, 2, 3, 4 person supply 6. Okay, done.
Perfect for a 6-sided die.
Yes.
All right. Now, Dan Throw was on the show a month or so back, Steve. Dan was on the show, the Space Biff. He did an excellent review, by the way. I know you've read it, Dennis, because I think you've talked about it. Yeah. But Dan was on the show, and surprisingly, he and I disagreed about something. His favorite part is the tech tree. I love the tech tree because I grew up in my computer games. I grew up playing Age of Mythology, Age of Empires, all those things where it's all focused on tech trees. I mean, you're just trying to figure out what tech tree you want to use and how you're going to maximize the particular way that you're going to do it. And I love that part of your game, but I love the SpaceX mechanic in here, because instead of being this big giant TI board, or like a lot of games where even Scythe, it's this board that you have to go all the way across. You've shrunk the entire universe down into this. It's still a big board, by the way, Steve. It's the size of a normal board game, but you've shrunk the entirety of space exploration into this small board. Yet every game is different. Dennis, how did you do that?
So, well, going back to my main goal, tech tree, I'm like, okay, so I have this big thing at the table. I don't, if I have a huge hex map, no one is going to have a table for that. And also, I want, maybe we talked about that before with Lacerda games. There's just too many things out there. So I want people to focus on one thing. It's like kind of back to music. You have that main movement, and then you have the side movement. So you can't just have two really loud movements, and then like you just like people get distracted. You have some a soft part. You have the main part. So this is the side part, and to be honest, it came next because, as I said, my main goal was the tech tree, but the tech tree needs to work on something for it to be the game. So this actually used to be just a military number, like through the ages, but like, it was just a number, and that's it. But then I was like, I need a little more because people like maps, but I don't really want a whole map. So what is the smallest I can do to shrink a map? So a graph, basically, a mathematical term, is the easiest way to shrink, to abstractify a map. And naturally you have Sol, which is where we come from, and then you have these distant stars that you're going to, and the first mechanic that came to mind is area control. So you have these spaceship powers, and then you just do the largest army, just like Settlers of Catan. That's how I explain that to other people. If you have the largest army, you get it. So that distills a lot and not distract people from the main thing.
But it gives players different avenues of victory. You know, you could focus on the tech tree, you could focus on the SpaceX. You might want to focus a little bit on both of them, maybe. I've found, at least in watching me and Bradley and Jay Bell play, that it gets a lot harder if you're just doing one. Yeah. You built in some barriers to doing that, isn't that right, Dennis?
Yes, this is where I really focus the testing. So if you notice that if you research, there's no blocking. Anyone can research anything, but the research is expensive. Just like real life, you need to spend people, and the people don't come back. They work their life in science. Yep. So you lose people. You end up not having enough food, and researchers don't give you that much food. Sometimes they remove a disk, but not as fast as colonization, which removes 2 at a time if you colonize the planet. So I totally agree with you. I don't like games where you just need to do one thing and you're done. You can ignore things. I tried very hard to limit the technology side, so that if you just do that, you're going to run out of steam. You have to go to the other way. Another way I do that is some technologies give you ships. So you'll be like, you'll be too stupid if you don't use them because they're there. Like
free ships.
Sometimes you just, it's ready for you. Just do it. So it's kind of a nudge mechanic. So now on the space side, if you just want to focus on space, then you're going to be flying around with these tiny one ships. Other people are going to beat you eventually.
At some point, they're going to catch up. They're going to be getting free ships from the technology card, Steve, and they're going to just come right back into space. And the whole time you've been working on this, and then at some point you're going to top out.
Yeah.
But there's a cool little twist to this. And this is where I wasn't expecting how important this was. And the second game we played, Bradley just smoked me because of this. And that's those 4 random cards. Well, I'll say 4. The 2 random cards in addition to the 2 in-game scoring cards. There's 2 that always come out, if I remember right. It's either 1 or 2. And then there's 2 that are different every game. Is that right?
Yep. 2 and 2 random.
What's this mechanic, and what was the inspiration for that?
It's funny that I can name every mechanic where they came from. This came from Civilization: A New Dawn, the board game, where they have 3 achievements, and I think if someone achieves 2 or 3, the game ends. Oh, and also Scythe, which is the stars, kind of a combination of both. So I like directions. So back to music, you need to have an overarching theme. So what are you going for? You can't just say play the game and just do your best. So the achievements are like the North Star when you start a game. Okay, so you need to get to level 4 always. You need to get colonized always because that's the goal of the game. And then you have these two little ones that you can kind of achieve mid game to late game, which kind of determines the direction of the whole game. Another interesting thing that happened in some of the playtests is even if someone is really lucky and get to level 4 early, like way earlier than I expected, they're sitting there because you need 4 stars in 4 players or 3 stars in 3 players to end the game. They finished the tech tree and have nothing to do, and other people just kept playing. So it is another limiting mechanic that kind of sometimes help with you have to do a little bit of everything to win.
So, Dennis, I've heard tech tree, I've heard area control with a little bit of combat. Who's got the most, 4 versus 2 versus 1. I've heard exploration. Is this a 4X game? Is this a 3X game? Where do you see it?
I would say 3.5.
3.5?
Can I choose that answer?
Yeah, absolutely. Split it.
So remind me of the exploitation,
Exploration,
exploration, which we have, and expansion,
and the one we always forget,
extermination.
Yeah. How do you forget that?
That's the one I'm missing. I just personally do not like games where I lose things.
Yeah.
So this, you do not lose any ships unless you elect to, which is colonization. And even then, I made sure I wrote in the rulebook, they're not dead. You don't kill your ships. They don't fight. They landed and they guard the planet that you colonize on. But I had to give it a half point because you do lose the disc if you lose control of the planet. It's a very soft combat that me as a Euro player, I can stomach it because you can get it back. You just need a little more ships. You just need the largest army again to get it.
I think that's what attracted me. Both Bradley and I love Euro games, but he likes conflict and other type games way more than I do. TI type of games. And this is the kind of game that we can play with our friends that aren't into Euros because it's going to satisfy our Euro itch, but it's also going to be plenty of thematic gaming. There's even though you're not rolling dice, there's a little bit of American trashiness in there where you're trying to take over planets and you're watching what other people doing. This is not passive aggressive type stuff. This is some of it's kind of in your face, Dennis.
Yeah, it is. It is. You can pick someone and just say, "I don't like you. I'm gonna take something right before you colonize." Yeah, you can do that. Yes. As a Euro player, this is actually out of my comfort zone, but I think it's a good thing. It pushes people who just do I'm going to optimize every turn. I don't care about what other people are doing except for the worker placement place. Just pushes a little bit, but not too much.
Not too much. Yeah. It's a good hybrid between the Euro and the Amerithrashness of some of these other games. So good on you on that. I do like the fact that you're getting us out of our comfort zone with the map.
Including myself.
It's definitely so Steve, in essence, he designed a game to push himself out of his comfort zone. Yeah. That's not bad, right?
No.
And I don't win this game very often.
Well, join the club because I haven't won yet. So, that little orange disc that you saw with the 4 points on the thing, that's not my disc. What's next for Beyond the Sun? Anything cooking?
So we're developing a solo mode. We're developing an expansion. So details will come out later. We're still working on it. We have
we're always fishing for scoop.
We have a new module, most likely.
Okay.
That we'll add to the factions. We have some new factions, and
we can call this a success. You completely sold out everywhere, right?
Yeah, and we also have a second printing coming, which is just the base game.
When should that be coming out for those fans?
I don't know. You have to ask Ken.
Yeah,
he will know the dates.
We should have asked him in the green room. Forgot about that.
Yeah.
But a lot of people have asked me about hey, we want to play. We see you talking about this game all the time because I'm always posting about it on social media. Can we play on computer?
I think Rio Grande is putting together a digital version. So we just have to clean it up and get it playable and stuff.
Yeah. And
Again,
talking,
and
Ken didn't say this was private, but Ken did say in the green room that, to mention that they're working on it.
Yeah.
And without mentioning any specific services, we should see some announcements about a digital version. So
yeah,
until you can get your hands on a physical copy like we have, there may be a way to get around that and play, especially in these COVID times, because I want to play with 4 players and I just can't. So I want to try this out. Steve, you heard a lot of talk tonight.
I did. Sound interesting to you? I'm quiet and listening for a long period of time here. This sounds interesting because one of the ideas that you get with these big sprawling epics is what I would think of as being, dizzy from all the choices. This sounds like it offers choices within a structure that is guiding you through that choice space. Now, you have options, but there is a universe that you're working in, and the universe directs you. I like the way you said that before, Dennis.
Yeah.
That's the difference between me wanting to play this game and me wondering, ooh, is it for me? That's the answer that makes it a yes.
I do also want to emphasize that even if all the choices are out, the entire tech tree is out, it doesn't mean you get to choose all of them because you have to research them. Any technology that you see, if you don't own it, you don't get to take that action. So it further limits your choice, but it creates a strategy. Like you have to plan, okay, which way do I want to go so that I can get that action? But when you get it, if someone else also has it, then it becomes a little bit of a fight because it's a worker placement spot.
Yeah, this is back, and again, taking it back to music for me, this is back to Baroque. There is structure. There is rhythmic structure to this, and you can play within that, and you can be very creative with it. But in some of those things where the things need to click in the right order, I need that to be there on the table to present it to me rather than romantic all over the place. I love it, but I probably couldn't compose it.
I like that you keep going back to Baroque. This is like I don't know whether you know enough, but this is like a fugue.
Yes.
Where at the beginning you only have one technology. So that's the theme. That's the theme of and then you flourish into this theme, and then a variation of this theme, and then you add more, and you add more voices.
But you don't ever lose the first theme. The first theme re-echoes throughout the fugue.
And people go back to that worker placement spot. It doesn't mean that they always pick level 3. They sometimes have to go and pick that first theme still.
No, you're right. We did have to go back to level 1, but at the same time, Dennis, each player had kind of their own song that was going on, right?
Yes.
So, Steve, you might be a little bit more military intermixed with whatever color you liked. I might totally ignore the military track. It reminds me of those computer games we used to play where when you're playing head to head on people, if you do exactly what other people are doing, you're just going to get nullified. Right. You have to zig while they're zagging. You have to be better than them in the categories they're not strong in, so you can overcome them, and then hope that your defenses are good enough. Same thing with this. Even though it's not direct combat, as in Dennis is over here, I'm going to get a bunch of armies and go over there and attack them. It's not that. It's the fact that Dennis gets to design his experience the way he wants to play. Now, Dennis, the way you made it is that they're going to come out randomly, so it's not like you put a square peg into a round hole every single time. You have to look at what the board cards came out. What technology came out in this game? What end goals have come out in this game? And how can I figure out from what's on the board, how do I get to that next level, right, Dennis?
Yeah.
Is that kind of what your goal was?
I do want to clarify that the person who researched it has a choice of 2. So
yes. Yeah.
They do get to, I like to call it, they get to influence the fate of the human history. So humankind.
That was the other disagreement that we got into with Dan a little bit, is that he liked the random way that they came out, because he said it's sort of like, the discovery of penicillin was kind of accidental from looking at something else. Bradley and I kind of liked it better when we had more agency over what was coming out.
Yeah.
What do you prefer? Do you like the random chance of science, or do you like the studied application of knowledge and stepping on the shoulders of giants?
I like the draw to pick one. That's my personal.
Take that, Dan.
Because No. Have you tried the expert mode where everything is open?
Well, we played the two different ways. Is that what you're talking about?
Okay. The basic mode is draw to pick one.
Yes.
The random mode that you talked about, actually.
Yeah.
It's draw to pick one.
We actually did it backwards. We did the one where you look at two of them and you make the choices.
Yeah, that's the basic game. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and then the expanded game is you have 12 cards on the table that you can see.
We also played that mode too.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure Bradley can correct me, but we played two different modes because we wanted to see how they played.
Yeah. So I like the random draw to pick one.
Oh, never mind.
Okay, yeah. So that's why.
Yeah, never mind. No, so he likes Dan's version better.
Yeah, because it's more thematic. I know sometimes it creates runaway leaders because they just drew the always draw the right one. But I feel like, okay, I play again if somehow someone got really lucky, because this is close to thematic. Okay, all right, this comes up. Oh, I got these two. They're not really in my plan. What do I do? Okay, I'll choose this best one. Maybe I'll alter my plan. I want to pivot. It's life. Something happens to you, you have to change.
What if you're on the wrong tech tree and Bradley pulls this amazing one, and I haven't researched any of those colors at all? Man, it's pretty tough. Hypothetically speaking, not talking about any one particular person.
And but the expert version where you get to choose, like you get to look at up to 12 cards before you choose. That's more typical of Euro games, where you get to plan and you can take away the card and put it on your side of the tree and not their side. Right. Then it gets more strategic, but it's not very thematic. Like, unless you go back to Dune, you eat the spice and you can see the future, why would you know all 12 technology that's coming out?
Because you're a Benny Gesserit?
Yeah.
Is that how you say it? Benny Gesserit. Because you're a Benny Gesserit. That's why.
It's less thematic because, like, you don't get to see every technology that human can research. So.
No, and I like that also when you say it that way, there are also then different forks in the game. Those forks in the game are not totally of your choosing, but again, it's a choice that you make within a constrained space.
Yeah,
that's an unfolding of the game rather than you can choose the entire future out in front of you.
Yeah,
I like that.
As you know, I'm picking on Dan. I think the world of Dan Thorold. I think he's the best critic that we have out there. The way he writes is just amazing. It makes me mad because he's such a good writer. So if anybody hasn't checked it out, check out Space Biff's review of Beyond the Sun. Because I think he really hits on the feelings of why this game is so important to the board game industry. So Dennis, kudos to you, because I love it when people do hybrid games, and this is a great example of a hybrid game. So Bradley says he prefers the expert mode because there's an incentive to go after other technology tracks for cards that support your style of play. That kind of goes back to what you're saying.
Yeah.
It lets you play the way you want to play the game, right?
Yes.
Whereas the discovery, the beautifulness of discovery is important, as Dan Thoreau, correctly points out.
Yeah.
So, two different ways of playing the game.
As I said, I like the kind of the creating the story. So I go with the discovery theme. But again, you can choose. You talk to the group and you play this time, and you play the other way the other time. Another thing I want to point out is basic factions and advanced factions. One is more sandboxy because everyone starts the same way. The other one, you have goals to achieve, but some people don't want to be locked into their goals. So choose.
Bone to pick with you on that one. We did play it the second time. Bradley, correct me if I'm wrong. We did play that, and I really focused hard on trying to get my special powers. And I wasn't sure at the end of the game. I'm like, I'm not so sure that that's what Dennis wanted me to do. That focusing on trying to get to those last spots is not the goal of the game. I should still be. This is a tech tree SpaceX game, not a develop your player board as best as you can and then come back and run that engine. Like, I was wasting a lot of resources just focusing on upgrading my board. Was I correct at the end of the game that that's not what you want to focus?
Yes, that's not what you should do. But you should try to win, but with a small emphasis on getting your powers.
Right. Not your only strategy.
You can't be the only strategy is to unlock that thing. Then what do? You don't have any points.
But can I consider that a win though if I unlock that last box?
I can see that.
It's like playing Dominion, Steve. Playing Dominion and using up your entire deck. You should win. That should be an automatic win. I played every card in my deck, and I found out that's not the way to win.
I can see that you get distracted by shiny things.
I totally do.
Honestly, BJ, you wouldn't know that he's a first-time guest on the show. He just kind of distilled the nature of Gumbo down there.
Dennis, you get me, man. You get me. Totally. I get totally distracted by shiny bubbles. I'm like the crab in Moana. Totally. Dennis, this has been a blast talking about Beyond the Sun. Hey, people, as you could see, I'm super excited about the game. You can read about it on our blog when we talk about our dozen games from 2020. It was tough 2020 this year because we didn't get to play quite as many games as we normally do, but we felt like we played a pretty big cross section. And this is one that, as I've told Steve and I've told others, I can recommend to a lot of different gamers. This is going to be people that like Euro games. You're going to like this one. People that like thematic games. You're going to like this one. People that like 20-minute party games, okay, maybe not. Maybe not this one. But everybody else, I think you're going to like this game. This is going to be good. It's Beyond the Sun from Rio Grande Games. Should be coming back into print, hopefully pretty soon, and maybe some digital implementations down the line. Is that right?
Yep.